My name is Michael Craig from Monarch Solicitors and I'm part of the firm's property and leasehold team. My day-to-day work includes residential conveyancing, freehold purchases and lease extensions. Freehold essentially means you own both the property that you're buying, but also the land on which that property sits. Leasehold, like the name suggests, mean you own the property on a lease from the landlord, who's often the freeholder. The freeholder can grant a lease to someone else for them to own and occupy the property for a number of years. Leases can range from around 40 years to up to 999 years. Leasehold also means your ownership is subject to the lease itself, meaning you might be restricted from doing certain things with the property unless you've obtained the landlord's permission first. Leasehold also means you have to pay something called ground rent to the freeholder, as they ultimately own the land on which your property sits. Ground rent is usually paid annually and can be anywhere from a peppercorn, so about £5, all the way up to upwards of £250. This is confusingly different to a rent charge, which is a nominal sum that's sometimes payable on certain freehold property. Typically, leases before the Second World War had around 999 years on them, whereas leases after the Second World War had around 99 years. These days, new build properties tend to have between 125 to 250 years. Ultimately, a leasehold property is defined by the lease. So a solicitor can look through the lease paperwork and advise on any potential problems stemming from the way that the lease is drafted. Things worth looking out for in leases are things like unfair restrictions, unreasonable burdens on the leaseholder, or doubling ground rent provisions. Sometimes if you want the property of your dreams, either to live in or invest in, you don't have too much choice in avoiding leasehold. It's not all doom and gloom though. As long as you've got a lease with a long enough term and the terms of the lease are fair, leasehold properties can still be an excellent investment for new buyers. Leaseholders have two options if they want to extend the lease to their property. They can either reach a voluntary arrangement with the landlord, or they can serve a formal notice on the landlord that compels them to grant you an extension. However, an existing proprietor can only go through that formal statutory process if they've owned the property for at least 2 years. The voluntary process can be quicker and easier if both parties can reach an amicable agreement between themselves. However, the power sits firmly with the landlord in those negotiations. They can simply give an offer and then just say, take it or leave it. The statutory process, on the other hand, gives more strength to the leaseholder in terms of negotiations on the price or the terms of the extension. The market or voluntary approach simply requires the landlord to be willing to extend the lease, and for the leaseholder to be happy with the terms that the landlord has proposed. Of course, you'll still need some legal help with making sure that the landlord is granting what they say they're granting, just so there's no nasty surprises. For houses, you can extend the lease by up to 50 years provided that you've owned the property for 2 years, and the property can be reasonably deemed a house, as in it has no overhanging or underhanging parts on a neighbouring property. Likewise for flats, you simply just need to have owned the property for over 2 years. For both types of property, there are exemptions and complications depending on the wording of the lease. A solicitor can look through the legal paperwork and help you determine if you are eligible to proceed through the statutory process. Essentially, the statutory process is done in 3 stages. Stage 1 is determining if you are eligible to proceed through the statutory process and instructing a valuer to tell you how much the lease extension premium should be costing. Stage 2, you serve that formal notice on the freeholder that compels them to grant you an extension. Once they've replied, you can negotiate on the purchase price. For Stage 3, once you've negotiated on the price, you can then negotiate on the terms of the lease extension paperwork and complete the legal formalities. The statutory process on average can take around 6 to 9 months. The main costs in the process will be the lease extension premium itself, your solicitor's fees, the valuer's fee, and the freeholder's costs, which unfortunately the leaseholder is obliged to pay, provided they're reasonable. Leasehold properties are not inherently problematic, so there's many great properties out there that are sold leasehold. As long as you and your representatives know what to look out for, you can get yourself a great property and you still always have the option of topping up the lease. Always check the lease. The lease is what regulates how you own the property. Make sure you know what your obligations are and what your restrictions are when you buy leasehold. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to learn more, please visit monarchsolicitors.com or feel free to give us a call on 0161 820 8888. Thank you.